WSWS, 16th of February 2024, the Maldives and Sri Lanka, arenas of geopolitical competition in the Indian Ocean. Smaller nations have been debt-trapped by China as part of their all-out war against the Indian subcontinent. China has financed rogue leaders who take bribes and sell their people into the Chinese debt trap. Sri Lanka and the Maldives, geographically situated along vital east-west shipping routes in the Indian Ocean, have emerged as central locations in the geopolitical tensions escalating swiftly between China, the United States, and India, respectively. The INS Karanj, a submarine of the Indian Navy, arrived in Colombo, the principal port of Sri Lanka, on February 3 for 2 days. The Sri Lankan Navy cordially received the vessel. The submarine's commanding officer, Commander Arunabh, visited the commander of the Western Naval Area of the Sri Lankan Navy, Rear Admiral Saman Perera. This response starkly contrasted how the Sri Lankan government handled a recent invitation for a visit by the Chinese research vessel Xiangyang 3. The Wickremesinghe administration declared a 12-month prohibition on research vessel visits in January, with the explicit intention of obstructing the Chinese boat, whose visit had been openly opposed by India. China asserts that its vessel is engaged in hydrographic surveys and submarine route planning in preparation for a conflict with India. New Delhi says that it may detect test-fired missiles or satellites from neighboring locations in addition to monitoring military installations in neighboring nations. Head of Maritime Policy Initiative at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, Abhijit Singh, told Voice of America on January 29, "We suspect that this vessel, despite being an oceanographic research vessel, is gathering information that China could use to improve its anti-submarine warfare capabilities and expand its undersea military operations, as it studies the seabed, temperature profile, eddies, and currents, among other things, in the Indian Ocean. This indicates that China will eventually possess a military advantage in the Indian Ocean." Regardless of the circumstances, the Chinese vessel was greeted favorably elsewhere almost immediately. The declaration of authorization by the Maldives government for the Chinese ship to land in their cantil was a direct affront to India. The decision was made in response to a declaration by Mohamed Matsu, the newly elected president of the Maldives, which mandated the complete withdrawal of Indian personnel from the nation by March 15. The Maldives have historically been considered a strategic backyard for India, which maintains a modest military outpost. The notoriously pro-China Matsu had recently returned from a state visit to Beijing. His declaration emphasizes a transition in strategy away from India. The visit of the Indian submarine to Colombo demonstrates that New Delhi is actively pursuing geopolitical dominance in the Indian Ocean region. The submarine's visit to Colombo, as reported by India's Deccan Herald on February 5, was intended to send a message to China's People's Liberation Army Navy, PLA Navy, which has recently increased its activities in the maritime neighborhood of India, and to highlight India's role as the primary security provider in the Indian Ocean region. The Hindu Times concurred, stating the same day that it distinguishes India diplomatically amid a dispute concerning China's maritime activities in the Indian Ocean region. INS Karanj is a conventional propulsion submarine with a displacement of 2,000 tons capable of performing various missions, including anti-submarine warfare, surface vessel conflict, long-range strikes, special operations, and intelligence gathering. It has become customary for Indian Navy submarines and ships to conduct so-called courtesy visits to Sri Lanka. In June of last year, another sub, the INS Vijayar, paid Colombo a visit in observance of the International Day of Yoga. India has been converted into a frontline state in the U.S. military strategic offensive against China under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In August of last year, the Modi administration declared that it is collaborating with the highest command of India's armed forces to determine what assistance it can offer the United States if Washington initiates hostilities with Beijing. Although New Delhi has historically considered South Asian nations within its domain of influence, its geopolitical objectives transcend the region. The 2015 iteration of the Indian Maritime Doctrine incorporated modifications to the status of New Delhi in the Indian Ocean region. Despite refusing to participate in the task force headed by the United States that is engaged in combat with Houthi rebels in the Red Sea, New Delhi presently maintains a presence in the Gulf of Aden with 2 frontline warships and a minimum of 10 warships in the northern and western Arabian Seas, in addition to a surveillance aircraft. Its most significant deployment to date has occurred in this region. India's naval excursions to Sri Lanka are integral to its strategic initiative to solidify its economic, political, and military alliance with Colombo. India is currently the preeminent economic partner, investor, and visitor source for Sri Lanka. A pipeline from southern India to Sri Lanka, a solar power project, liquefied natural gas infrastructure, and a high-capacity power grid link are all projects to which New Delhi has consented. The strategically significant port and industrial centre in eastern Sri Lanka, Trincomalee, will be outfitted with logistical facilities with a comparable undertaking at Kankasantharai in the north. In addition to supporting Sri Lanka's endeavours to obtain a $3 billion rescue loan from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, India extended a long-term loan of $4 billion amidst the island nation's ongoing and unprecedented economic crisis. In addition, preparations are underway for Sri Lanka and India to sign an economic and technical cooperation agreement in March of next year to lower trade barriers for products and services. In addition, a passenger ferry service between Nagapattinam, India, and Kankasantharai, Jaffna, is scheduled to resume at the end of this month, re-establishing a maritime connection between the two nations that had been severed for 4 decades. Existing Indian travel to Sri Lanka is considerable. Foreign Minister of India S. Jaishankar openly advocated for Indians to plan their upcoming vacations in Sri Lanka to undermine the Maldives tourism industry, which is vital to the country's economy. India is proactively engaging with opposition parties in Sri Lanka, including the National People's Power (NPP), Parliamentary Front and Janatha Vimukti Peramuna (JVP), to ascertain that the incoming leader in the upcoming elections will maintain a steadfast adherence to the geopolitical objectives of New Delhi. The Modi administration extended an official invitation to a JVP/NPP delegation, led by its leader Anurakumar Dissanayake, for a 5-day visit at the beginning of this month. Sri Lanka announced just a few days after prohibiting the Chinese ship's visit that it would contribute vessels to Operation Prosperity Guardian, an American military operation targeting the Houthi militia in Yemen, which is being conducted in the Red Sea. In reaction to endeavors headed by India and the United States to undermine Chinese influence and incorporate Sri Lanka into their sphere of influence, Beijing has taken measures to enhance its strategic ties with the Maldives. President Mohamed Morsi was greeted with an extravagant red carpet reception upon visiting China. Abdullah Yameen, the former president of the Maldives, oversaw the signing of a prior agreement between the State Oceanic Administration of China and the Ministry of Environment and Energy of the Maldives for the joint operation of an ocean observatory to be constructed on Majinudhu. In contrast, the undertaking was discontinued after his defeat in September 2018. Presently, India is apprehensive that the agreement may be rekindled under Matsu. While Beijing maintains that ocean observation and research will be the primary objectives of the observatory, New Delhi asserts that it will provide Beijing with strategic and commercial maritime access to a vital region in the Indian Ocean. Presently, tensions are escalating in anticipation of the approaching deadline for the withdrawal of Indian troops. In response to Mail's request, Indian Navy Chief Admiral R. Hari Kumar told CNN News 18 on January 25 that the Indian government had not issued the directive for its defence personnel to depart the Maldives. "We are awaiting instructions, regardless of the outcome," Kumar stated. The United States and India are keen on countering the Chinese influence in Maldives. New Delhi supported the Sirisena Wickremesinghe administration's installation and Washington's regime change operation in the 2015 presidential elections as Sri Lanka drew closer to China during the presidency of Mahinda Rajapaksa. Should the need arise, New Delhi and Washington may execute a regime change operation against the newly formed Matsya government.